Let's talk about quantum healing through the lens of quantum entanglement. And let's take a look at that, some of the most cutting-edge research in quantum entanglement from the perspective of Ayurvedic wisdom. Thousands of years ago, they talked about quantum healing, distance healing, spontaneous healing, how you can encourage the body to actually heal itself in a natural and spontaneous way. And some of those kind of ancient insights are actually being understood and somewhat validated by some of the most cutting edge quantum physics. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit. First of all, we should know that in Ayurveda, there's an old saying that says the more subtle something is, the more powerful it is. And we know that because think of circadian rhythms, right? We now know that that's Nobel Prize winning science. We can't see these invisible rhythms that are supposed to align with our biological clocks, and some turn on at night and some turn on at the day. And it's very important that we are in sync with those rhythms. Birds fly south, whales migrate. They do that because they're entrained with those natural rhythms. In Ayurveda, it was understood that we are also connected to those rhythms, and we can actually feel and understand and live in harmony and in sync with those rhythms, just like the animals do in nature. So it does make sense, right? But you can't see them, they're invisible. So the more subtle, the more powerful. The microbiome, we can't see these invisible bacteria, yet the microbiome regulates kind of everything that we experience. It regulates our gut immunity, which is 70% of our immune response, regulates our thoughts and our emotions through the kind of the psycho world of psychobiotics, connecting our gut microbiome with our brain, and the brain-gut-brain connection is very real and very live. But we can't see these bugs. Now, thousands of years ago in Ayurveda, they understood that there was something called krimi. They called them invisible bacteria. So they understood that these bacteria could be good or bad, and they understood that they had an influence on us, and they talked about how to fix them, and it wasn't about killing them, it was about healing the environment and the host. Now, let's talk about that from a quantum physics perspective. What is quantum healing? What is quantum entanglement? Einstein talked about this thousands of years ago. He called it spooky action at a distance. So kind of fasten your seatbelts a little bit out there, and I'll do my best to describe this in a simple way. So when and I should say also that Einstein, Max Planck, Max Planck, who was the father of modern physics, all understood that there was an underlying field that was intelligent, that had everything to do with manifesting everything that we see in this world. Everything we see around us comes from underlying fields, which then manifest into particles, which manifest into the material world that we live in. They knew that that field was intelligent. They didn't say it was God, but they basically said it was impossible for it not to be an intelligent field. Many quantum physics are suggesting that that field may in fact be our own consciousness, that thing that allows everything to have some life kind of spark of awareness that we would call consciousness. Okay, so what is quantum entanglement? You've probably heard of the word, and that's when two particles are entangled, that they could influence each other at great distances, which means that if you have two particles that are entangled, and if I look at one of those particles, it could alter the spin or the function of another particle instantaneously at great distances, even if it was on the other side of the universe. And this breaks all the rules of speed of light, which is why Einstein didn't come on board with this, called the spooky action at a distance, because it doesn't make any sense. But now they've done many studies since Einstein's time, and they've proven that quantum entanglement is a very real thing. So in the world of quantum computing and MRIs and PET scans, they could use the scientific fact that if you observe a certain particle, it will have an effect on another particle in your body, and they can use that technology for imaging, for for security. Imagine if you're looking at your computer and somebody at great distance all of a sudden is now looking at your computer. It would alert my computer that somebody's hacking into my computer, because as soon as they observe it, that affects a subatomic particle in my computer and lets me know that I'm being hacked, and you can adjust it accordingly. This is the future. Absolutely, the future is understanding how to use quantum entanglement, that as I observe something, it's going to change a particle instantaneously at incredible distances, doesn't matter how far away they are. Okay, and I've written an article about this with a lot of the science. You can dive deeper into this at LifeSpa.com, so you can kind of learn more. I've written lots of articles about quantum healing, and you can kind of go in there and nerd out on all of my articles on this subject. But I want to talk about the Ayurvedic version of this and how it could sort of relate. Well, in Ayurveda, it said that the cause of all disease is when consciousness, the field of intelligence, becomes the body, which we know is a fact. There's a field that becomes us. And when that body forgets that it's underlying, that's part of that underlying field of intelligence, that field, when that field becomes matter and the matter forgets it's part of that field, that's the cause of disease, where the body forgot that it's part of this field of intelligence, this field of consciousness. And the cure is to restore the memory of pure consciousness into every cell of your body. Make this body less dense, right? So here is where the science comes in. It turns out that at the junction point between field and physiology, or consciousness and matter, there has to be something that exists as both a particle, which is material, or an underlying field of intelligence, which would be a waveform, right? And there is something like that, and those are called electrons and photons. So think of photons, which are particles of light. We know that frequencies of light, we measure red light therapy as 660 nanometers. This is the frequencies. They're in waveforms, but they also can be particles, right? So if you were trying to restore the memory of pure consciousness of the field into the physiology, you would want to put your attention in the middle, at the gap, or the junction point between consciousness and matter. And then that awareness, light, could actually shine into both directions and restore the memory of pure consciousness. So this was the Ayurvedic understanding of self-healing. It also has to do with distance healing, because these particles that we're talking about, photons, and when they're entangled, particles happen at the speed of light, but entanglement happens instantaneously, way faster than the speed of light. So the idea that distance healing could actually be a thing, which it absolutely was in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years, we're beginning to understand that there may be a mechanism for how that works. So inside of your body, there are what are called photon emissions. They're called ultra-weak photon emissions, and they're coming out of your DNA, thousands per second. And most of those photon emissions are due to DNA damage, and they're incoherent and very particulate. But what studies show that when you meditate, do yoga, and breathe, what happens is the incoherent biophoton emissions become less incoherent and become more coherent. They become more wave forms as opposed to particle forms. So a photon, like we said, can be a wave or it can be a particle. When it's a wave, it's coherent. When it's a particle, it's incoherent. It's dense. It's a particulate, right? So it has to do with matter. And that matter can be dense and easily forget that it was once a wave, easily forget that it was once pure consciousness. So in Ayurveda, it was like, well, if we put our attention at the junction point between field and physiology, consciousness and matter, we can actually perhaps wake up that consciousness. Now we're talking about entanglement. If I am aware of a waveform that's entangled with a particle in my body that has become dense and incoherent and possibly even doing damage, and I put my attention on that waveform, it can have an entanglement effect on altering the spin or the function of the particles of my body, making them less dense, making them more coherent, making them more of a waveform. Now, we know that when you have incoherent biophoton emissions, they can actually damage you. And we also know that they can actually damage things outside of you. And that's been studied. And that's called the bystander phenomenon, where if you put something next to someone who was irradiated with, for cancerous treatments and things, that actually can have an effect on you. They did it with monkeys, and they found that there was damage of one monkey who was next to another monkey who had been irradiated, and they measured the mechanism of the healthy monkey damage from being in proximity, and it was the incoherent damaging photon emissions. On the flip side of that, when those particles are coherent in a waveform state, they have been shown to they're more coherent and they carry information. This is called Bocon's phenomenon, which means that, and this is well understood in the world of your ultra-weak photon emissions coming out of your DNA, that they carry information throughout your body. Much research has been done now suggesting that our thoughts are carried by these particles of light carrying information in our body, because a nerve thought to another nerve thought to another nerve thought isn't fast enough to explain how we can think so fast, right? We do think pretty fast as human beings, and one nerve firing another nerve is just too slow. It's fast, but it's too slow. So they're now looking at, and I think well accepted, that these photon emissions carry information and even carry our thoughts. The Bocon's hypothesis suggests that these particles, when they're coherent, carry intention, which means that if you have an intention to heal and your photons are coherent, and that could actually, the photons could carry this intention into the density of the matter and support a healing response. Now, we know, and studies show, that when you do yoga and breathe and meditate and pray, that the incoherent photons become coherent. The particles become more waveform-like, right? The density of the matter becomes more consciousness-based, is the mechanism for that. So when you do yoga, breathing, and meditation, and your photon emissions now become more coherent, and then you have an intention, and those photons of light, those ultra-weak photon emissions, can carry information, which we know they can carry that intention inside your body and support an entanglement effect where they can alter photons that might have been incoherent and dense and make them more able to carry consciousness or carry waveform information, and therefore allow you to be a more conscious being, a more self-aware being, as opposed to only responding because of, from a physical, dense perspective. In Ayurveda, they knew that we are consciousness, we are spirit, and we have this body. And when you die, you become a spirit. But they were like, yeah, why do we have to only figure out that we're a spirit when we die? Why can't we have some awareness of the fact that we're consciousness-based now, while we're here? And that happens when you do things like yoga, breathe, meditation, and increase your natural self-awareness. And there's many, many, many mechanisms to make that happen. So the quantum healing, quantum entanglement from the Vedic perspective is, as I meditate, and I become aware of these photon emissions, these photons of light that exist at the junction between consciousness and matter, field and physiology, because they are both particles and field at the same time. And if you meditate, they can flip into a more wave-like state, a more coherent state, which would then provide a more healing effect in a quantum entanglement way to actually help support more consciousness in the density of the physiology. And that is why what quantum healing is. And this is not restricted just to our own body, because quantum entanglement happens, like I said earlier, instantaneously at great distances, even, yes, faster than the speed of light. Still a little freaky, but that's what the science is telling us. Which means if I'm in a meditation or a prayer, and I have an intention to heal someone at great distances, those photon emissions can carry that intention instantaneously through quantum entanglement. So we are powerful instruments of awareness, and we have this ability. We just get so wrapped up in thinking and worrying about everything in the world, we don't realize that if we would still our nervous system and allow our mind to become more calm, like I said in the very beginning, the more powerful, the more silent, and the more subtle it is, the more powerful it is. And we're talking about quantum entanglement, subatomic particles that are affected by your intention, your thoughts, and that could be carried at great distances or within your body or at distances to heal others, if you like. This is why the studies on prayer are so profound, and there's no understanding of a mechanism really until now. So I encourage you to read this article, type in quantum consciousness, quantum healing on my website at LifeSpa.com, and read all my articles about this because it's a fascinating field, emerging science. I'll keep you informed as the science continues to grow in this field. While you're at LifeSpa.com, sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss any of these articles. And if you like all this information, please subscribe to the channel you're listening to. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard. Hi everybody, I just want to take a minute and tell you what we do here at LifeSpa.com. I've been in practice now for 40 years, 38 of them have been practicing Ayurvedic medicine full-time. For the last 20 years, I've been writing articles and doing videos on the ancient medical wisdom of Ayurveda with the modern science. If something's been around for 1,000 years, still practiced today, and you have modern science to prove it, boy, I really feel like that's something we should all be taking a look at. And that's what we do at LifeSpa.com, and all that information is for free. So just go to LifeSpa.com and search in your health topic, and you'll get the information, the article that you need, hopefully that will help you. While you're there, check out our Ayurvedic store. You can get there through LifeSpa.com or go to store.lifespa.com. And there we have all of our organic Ayurvedic herbs, organic skincare line, more books, tapes, knowledge that we give you is all there at our store. All of our cleansing kits are there in our store. All of our herbs are whole herbs with the natural occurring microbiome, the way it came out of the soil. And that's critically important because if I took the bugs out of you, you'd be completely different. We take the bugs away from a plant, like sterilizing and making an extract or spraying your food with pesticides, you lose significant benefit of that plant. And that's why we use the whole plant with the natural occurring microbiome. So check us out, learn more about what we're doing here at LifeSpa.com, and we'll see you again.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at LifeSpa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.